Alright, so hello everyone and welcome to what is going to be, I guess, almost the second revival of the podcast, although I did one earlier this year on April 30th. Yes, 2020 has just been completely flying by, and it's quite something, because I always felt like, I did it like a month ago, I did like something like, I said I'd do it every 2 weeks, but now that I'm actually kind of making playthroughs again and recording again and a whole bunch of other stuff, definitely kind of getting really down into the nitty-gritty of things. So without further ado, there's a lot of stuff to really kind of talk about, some which is not as relevant. First things first, because I have a lot of there's like 20 topics on here almost, but nice. OBS's feature to pause is pretty nice. But anyway, the first topic really is kind of simple. The Wii U and 3DS eShops are to close across 42 countries, which primarily consists of Latin America and the Caribbean. They are still open, presumably in Europe, and I definitely know they're still open in the United States. This is probably just to facilitate, less demand in these countries, so they're just starting to wrap up shop and close it down as Nintendo moves further and further onto the Switch, which is kind of a tragedy because, like I always say about the eShops for the 3DS and Wii U, is that they have such a wide variety of games and virtual console titles that the Switch does not have, even to this day. And even if it does have it, you require an online service to play it and pay for it. Has confirmed that if you play a lot of these games, they you could just buy them and keep them, but they have not moved a lot of that capability forward onto the Switch, at least for games where they could. Obviously, there's no way to play Wii games on the Switch because there's no motion bar, there's no capability or interface for that. And there's no capability for that, and there's no way to play DS games, is what I was also going to say, because that requires two screens. But for the most part, all those other games, people will just opt not to. And that's a little bit of a shame. But the other thing that Nintendo is trying to do is that they are trying to step back from mobile phone development. Animal Crossing New Horizon has given them more faith in their own brand, which is kind of a nice thing to hear, actually having played the game. I think that just to think about Nintendo actually giving more of their own faith and credit to their own brand is actually kind of a big thing, because Nintendo makes a lot of good games. I think that despite all the bullshit going on with them trying to get into the mobile brand and trying to do things like Super Mario Run and other things, and those are definitely good ideas. There's definitely a lot of money to be made, and I'm sure that for at least a time, like, they seem like good ideas. Pokemon Go, for instance, was definitely a massive success. In the year of 2016, 2017, Pokemon Go was fucking big. And that's really the most intensive thing about it, is that their initial, first one or two games were blockbusters, but Animal Crossing brought them back to their own sort of game style, and I actually kind of like that, because I think, especially, and this is me personally, you might agree, you might disagree, after the masterpiece, I will go as far as to say, as Fire Emblem Three Houses, because I think that game is absolutely amazing. It seems like a no-brainer, in my opinion, because the amount of quality that Nintendo can pull out, in my opinion, makes so many other games just seem like nothing. It seems like they're a waste of money. They're not as good. I have been completely blown away by that. Animal Crossing is fun. Obviously, it's not as narratively strong or as intense or takes itself as seriously as Fire Emblem. But I think that there's definitely a lot of potential here in that Nintendo refocusing just on making quality games that appeal to the fan base, have good features, and I mean, in the case of some other franchise, not so much Animal Crossing, being able to go back on that would be a pretty nice thing. They definitely have decided, because originally this was a big multi-step process, and they are not really looking forward. The president, Shintaro Furukawa, said that they're not really looking forward to, or not looking to continue releasing new applications in the mobile market. And that was we'll see how that pans out. They have a couple of different games that have kind of really been not doing well. Super Mario Run has not been doing too great. There's actually a chart that I found that I guess I should probably link the stupid thing. Dragalia Lost especially has been just down a massive amount, and that's sad because I actually know two friends who play Dragalia Lost, and they just do not enjoy it nearly as much anymore. Especially in the middle of the viral pandemic that we are experiencing currently, to see that Animal Crossing does so well is also probably kind of like one of those signs. It's like when Pokemon Go came out, it was like, oh, look how great Pokemon Go is doing. So obviously they want to continue doing that and that and that, because a lot of people bought it, and like I said, it became one of the best-selling games on the Switch. It still sells, which is also another thing I want to point out, is that not only did it sell on the first couple of weeks it was out, it has continued to consistently sell, which is something that a lot of other games can't really throw out there. Needless to say, I think it'll be a good step. It'll be, in the long term, a good step to keep a good, solid gaming backbone. I have my misgrievances. Is that even a word? Misgivings, something like that. I don't even know. I have my opinion on the Switch, as you know. There's a lot of things I have to say about it. But one thing that I'm at least confident about with the Switch is that if it makes them a ton of money, we could possibly end up in another GameCube era. And that's kind of what we had, well, with the SNES. That's kind of also what we had with the Wii. And that's kind of what I'm hoping the Switch will lead way to, is that, yeah, everybody buys it, they make a ton of money, but hopefully we get to the point where it's kind of like, all right, at this point now, we have a ton of money, we can invest in a lot of different games and franchise, because despite what a lot of people hate about the Wii U launch titles and the Wii U, or not launch titles, I'm sorry, the Wii U exclusives were very well done. They at least tried to be something innovative. A lot of them that don't require you to use the gamepad are actually pretty fun. And that's what I think I've seen a lot more people, now this is anecdotal, but I've seen a lot more people be a little bit more lenient on the Wii U as time has gone on. As it sort of fades into the last generation mentality, the Wii U kind of has taken on a more favorable tone, because I think people, now that we're distant from the console and we're looking more at the games themselves, and the games of course being stuff like Yoshi's Woolly World, Xenoblade X, Super Mario 3D World, most of which have been ported. Mario 3D World has not been ported. Xenoblade X has not been ported, Woolly World has not been ported, but stuff like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, they made a sequel to Mario World and a sequel to Splatoon, Pokken Tournament, all those got ported. Oh crap, I ended the recording, I'm so used to doing that. Hopefully I remember to fix that. But yeah, sorry about that. I had to take a very brief break just to grab some stuff, which is new, because OBS now has the ability to pause, which might have been in back when I made the last one, but I don't really remember. But moving on from besides that, the developers behind the PS5 have confirmed that there will not be at least any native PS3, PS2, or PS1 support. That is kind of tragic. I mean, at this point, we've already seen the console reveal, so this isn't very big news. The general gist behind it is that if you have a PS4 game, they will be giving certain PS4 games patches that will allow them to run on the PS5, as well as just in general upscale them and make them run a bit better to take advantage of the stronger hardware, which, I mean, it's nice if you like PS4 games. I think that this console generation is really going to focus heavily on backwards compatibility, and I think that's going to be an ongoing thing throughout this. Not so much because they want to have a big library, but because they don't really want to keep milking you for games you've already bought. A large chunk of games from this generation were pretty much remasters. This was kind of like the generation where, while a lot of games got them that I thought were great, like for instance the Spyro trilogy, the Crash trilogy, SpongeBob, Battle for Bikini Bottom, there's a lot of other stuff like Okami, the Resident Evil series basically getting fully remastered, some of which they remastered the remake, which is like layers upon layers of it. And there's obviously more. The Mega Mans, Uh, I mean, there's a lot on the PS3 that got remastered. I think the Devil May Cries were this generation, if not last generation. But you get the kind. Oh yeah, Devil May Cry 4 was one of them that got it. They want people to kind of keep that because it kind of artificially extends their library, right? Like people might not be so quick to sell back their games. It kind of curtails the used game market a bit if people have an incentive to keep around a game they may have liked. Not a ton, but like it's more points in the favor of, hey, instead of people just completely getting rid of their last console when the new one comes out, like a lot of people tend to do. They'll sell off a console when it's no longer needed or no longer new. Definitely do not use me as an example of someone who gets rid of their stuff, because I still have consoles from when I was literally 4. So, and I'm sure a lot of people do. I'm sure, like, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably don't sell a lot of your stuff. And I'll tell you, do not sell your stuff. There's 2 things I'll tell you not to do. And I mean, you could choose to ignore this advice, but the 2 things I tell you not to do, and really I needed someone to tell me this back in 2007 and 2008 when I was suckered into selling a lot of my stuff that I never got back at the same quality, is do not sell any consoles or games. Just don't. Just, it's like stocks, like just keep it. Just hold on to that shit. Don't sell them. And if you're going to keep them, do not keep them in your basement. Do not keep them in your attic under any pipes. No pipes. I don't care if the pipe is empty. Make sure no animals can get to it. No wildlife. No insects or whatever. And also just try to make sure that no pipes. I don't care how awesome your pipage is and how great how tight they are and how impenetrable and how much the dude sold you that they'll never burst. You never know what's gonna happen. Someday the winter it'll freeze over, it'll start a little crack, and then I don't know, who knows? Because I have had multiple people, especially one person in particular, I always cite this story, tell me about his father's Atari 2600 with tons of old games, and I think he even said, like, yeah, it was almost a full collection or something like that. It was a lot of games. And I asked him, what's up with it? So why are you telling me all this? Because it broke. The pipe above it burst, soaked the whole fucking thing. It didn't work again. And that kind of story just makes me sad, especially since now Atari 2600s. I mean, I'm sure someone out there is making a new one, right? Like, I don't think Atari cares if you bootleg, create an Atari 2600. I don't even know if Atari even still exists. The last time I saw them on a video game was Enter the Matrix and maybe like Tetris or something. But the long story short of it all is that Atari is... not Atari. The pipes are your biggest enemy. I just hate hearing that, and I would hate for someone else out there to really care about something like their Atari or their old GameCube. For me, and for example, my old GameCube. Obviously you can't keep this stuff lying around. Most normal people don't, and that's totally fine. Do not put it under any pipes. Do not. I would feel terrible if something were to happen to it, because that you can never really replace it. And as I learned selling a lot of my games to buy shittier games I didn't care about, you never really get back that high quality that you had before. Like, I had a lot of games that I kept in very good condition, very good quality, and I made the mistake of selling them like a fool, including a lot of my favorite games, because I was suckered into the idea of, well, you could just buy it back later and it'll be fine. And the one thing that, and this is why you never listen to boomers who don't play video games, or anyone, but specifically the boomers who tell you that it'll be alright, you will never get those games back in the same quality. Unless they are new and you plan to buy them a week later, you will never get them back. That will just never happen. I mean, nowadays, who cares, right? Every game is fucking digital anyway. So, I mean, unless, like, this only applies to people who has a hard-on for physical stuff. And this is totally not the point I wanted to make in the podcast, but the real point of this topic, which was the PS5 having no backwards support, is that Microsoft has already pledged to have basically almost enough support for its entire library. All the big games are going to get it. The Xbox One probably will almost be 100% backwards compatible. The 360, I think they said, what was it, like 5,000 games or something? I forget exactly what they said for the other two. I don't have it in front of me. I didn't put it here because this podcast document is literally months old at this point. This podcast document was started when they were starting to reveal Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So this is actually probably made the week like of the last podcast, to be honest with you. But yeah, the long story short is that do not sell your games. You will never get them back. There's a lot of, if you can avoid it. Like, if you actually need the funds to survive, then obviously I'm not going to sit here and say starve. But if you could, if it's more of just a want, if it's just a little side thing, keep it. I promise you, keep it. You'll want to replay it, or it'll be worth something in a long time from now. And I mean, that's I mean, for me, I just like to own my stuff for a long time. What can I say? Disney tried to copy a legitimate day. Oh yeah, did they try to copyright May the 4th? Yeah, so Disney, if you posted anything under the May the 4th hashtag, they had a whole big paragraph where they automatically claimed license to use your work for free. So like if you made fan art or if you did something else, they have a whole big paragraph where you basically, they don't claim ownership, but they have non-exclusive, I'm going to read it word for word, non-exclusive, sub-licensable, irrevocable, and royalty-free worldwide license under all copyrights, trademarks, patents, trade secrets, privacy, and publicity rights, and other intellectual property rights for the full duration of those rights to use, reproduce, transmit, print, publish, publicly display, exhibit, distribute, redistribute, copy, index, comment on, modify, transform, adapt, translate, create derivative works based upon, publicly perform, publicly communicate, make available, and otherwise exploit such user-generated content. Yeah, May the 4th is totally a Disney propaganda day. Just FYI. It's like legally speaking, it's a lot of words. It's a word sandwich. This is Disney being Disney. I mean that's who they are. It's what it is. I don't, at this point, do I really need to say anything about Disney? They are a massive media conglomerate. They make some of the most soulless movies I think I could have ever imagined. Mostly the 90s cartoon reboots, which, I mean, they gross a ton, but they are artistically nowhere close to the same quality as the original couple of works. And I mean, The Lion King itself made $1 billion and is just not even near the same level as the original Lion King at all. Let's see. The original Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, has PC multiplayer now through Steam, but it's dead, which was unfortunate. I tried it like a month ago. Like, I tried a couple of things and it didn't really have anything. Paper Mario The Origami King got announced. It's actually out today, which is pretty fucking cool. I actually really do enjoy Paper Mario. Like I always cite, I liked Thousand Year Door when I played it. I didn't really like Super Paper Mario when I played it. That might have just been Wii fatigue. I was kind of sick of the Wii at that point. I as I've said this story 1,000 times, so I'll give the brief recap. The Wii really turned me off of a lot of the stuff about it. The controller was not very fun to hold. It wasn't very great, in my opinion. The games were way too heavily reliant on the whole waving the stick around, to the point that multiplats I just didn't even want to touch. Because it just wasn't fun to have to do, instead of doing, because QuickTime events were big back then. The only multiplat I really enjoyed on the Wii was Resident Evil 4, because I felt like the aiming was really fucking cool. Like you never really get a game that lets you aim the same way that game did. So I like that. I thought that was kind of fun. Other than that, I was not a big fan of the Wii. So Super Paper Mario I didn't really play. I didn't play Sticker Star because I didn't even know it came out, and if I did, I just didn't care. But when Color Splash came to the Wii, I legitimately bought it, not even knowing what it was going to be about. Like, that was an actual legitimate time where I just said, hey, I don't know anything about this game, I just want to play. And I think that was 2016, right? If I hypothetically, let me go back. How is Doom Eternal still processing? I need to upload the last part. How is it stuck at 95% processing? What? What the fuck? I might have to re-upload that. I uploaded this yesterday. YouTube does some weird shit. I don't know how a video I uploaded yesterday is still stuck at 95% processing. That's highly suspect. What was it? Color splash? I'll do it after this. It doesn't need to be up until tomorrow. Actually, no. This was supposed to be today's video. Oh my fucking god. Whatever. Anyway, back to the point. Color Splash was 2016. I played in like October to November, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was like November 1st. Oh god, how long are these parts? This is back when I used to render by session length. It was a lifetime ago, holy shit. But yeah, I really liked the game. I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty fun, unique take on the Mario series. Even though a lot of it was kind of annoyance-based, I kind of liked it, and it kind of really turned me on. So I'm like, alright, I'm really into Paper Mario now. I think it's a lot of fun. And I just wanted to try more of it, and try more of it I will, because I want to give Origami King a chance. Not that it really needs a chance. I'm sure it'll be a fun, great game. I think the biggest thing about it though is that it's not going to be like Color Splash and Sticker Star, because those two games, people always said they wanted to get Thousand Year Door back, so they're going to get Thousand Year Door back, which is fine because I like Thousand Year Door too, but I did kind of think there's a way to perfect what was happening in Color Splash. And I think it's just a little bit of a shame that probably won't be happening. But yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere as an announcement because, and let me delete fucking Doom Part 6. Jesus. Actually awful. How does a YouTube video get stuck for literally a day? Oh shit, I hit the wrong thing. God damn it. I'm not a fan of the YouTube redesign. I every time you think you kind of get... The one thing that they haven't redesigned at YouTube is the way that the front page looks. They have not given us back any control to be like, hey, I want to redesign this, or hey, I want to do that, or anything. No, it's just every page is generic. I think you can't even like mandate dark mode. Someone else has to have it set as their setting, and that's the only way that you get it. And that's annoying. I'm not a huge fan of the way that they handled that. But I digress, and my computer locks up, which is excellent. Isn't that the best? That's my favorite part about having a computer. Come on. Uh-oh. Am I still recording? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the YouTube update by any measure at all, any stretch of the mind. But, okay, that should be good for now. Until it locks at 95% again. I haven't had to, like, literally watch a YouTube upload in forever. I assumed that shit was done. It probably might have just been a glitch in the system. So there was Silent Hill DLC for Dead by Daylight, which is at least kind of interesting. Let me mute that. Dead by Daylight, I know it's still popular. I have a couple of friends that play it. But Silent Hill, I mean, since PT has basically been dead again. And at this point, remembering that PT, I believe all that happened in spring of 2015. Could be wrong. It might have been fall of 2016. But I feel like it was like early 2015 when PT happened and then it disappeared. So it's been 5 years at this point. I mean, like Resident Evil had the 7 game, which started that new engine. We had 2 remakes off of that same engine, and now we're getting Resident Evil 8. Spoiler, because yeah, there was an E3 happen, the minor event that was like the replacement E3, and yeah, Silent Hill is just dead in the water. So Konami, I guess, is just going to use Silent Hill as a running gag. They'll just be Pyramid Head, because that's the only thing that ever really got popular out of it. I mean, there's the Fog, the Siren, and like a couple other stuff, but everybody remembers Pyramid Head because he was just so out there and so crazy. And I mean, it's a great, it's a great villain when it was done in James's story. I mean, it kind of just appears and stuff now because it's just iconic. You know, it's like, how could we not have the one thing people know, even when it doesn't really make much sense for other people to be seeing Pyramid Head, especially when you establish that Silent Hill is a horror franchise, a horror world where people see like their deepest fears and their repressed desires and stuff like that. There's a lot of narrative creativity that goes into that, And I mean, at least for the composer, he's working on this new Cyberpunk anime, which is being made by Trigger. I think it's him, right? Akira Yamaoka, I think his name is. That's not on the podcast document. That's just something I saw, and I should put stuff like that down because that's kind of cool. AT&T is reportedly looking to sell Warner Brothers games for $4 billion. Now, Activision, EA, and Take-Two have shown interest. I think Microsoft has also shown interest. Basically, what this would mean is stuff like Mortal Kombat and the Batman games, if there are any future ones, which it seems like there will be, would come off of this. They would have a degree of this just sort of kicking around, and they would own it, and they would at least maybe want to buy it. Because Mortal Kombat 11 came out and was a very big game. The Batman Arkham lines literally were gigantic, probably some of the biggest launches of the last couple of years, needless to say. And I think they would be kind of fools to not totally capitalize on that. That, in my opinion, is pretty fucking cool. That well, not that they're selling it, but that the Batman games became some of the biggest single-player experiences. It reminds me how good things were in the early 2020s or early 2010s, because like those games I remember distinctly being like big shit. It was like really cool to imagine that there was going to be a full-on Batman game that wasn't a meme and took itself seriously. And sometimes it's just hard to imagine that. It was only like a 6-year period where all those Batman games came out, I think. It was like 2009, 2011 was Arkham City, maybe? I think so. 2013 was Arkham Origins, which they kind of like try to forget ever happened. And then 2015 was the finale. So it was like every 2 years they had a new Batman game, and now of course it's been 5 years since the last one. Kind of crazy when you really think about it, that it's time flew that fucking much. But yeah, they're trying to sell. There's a couple other games that they also want to sell. I don't really remember them at the moment, and if I can't remember them, it's not that they're not important. It's just that those two were the top of the line because people were making memes like EA is going to microtransaction their way through these games if they acquire it. They showed off Pokemon Snap, and I'm not sure if they threw this in just to be dicks to Game Freak, but they had a fully sized Wailord in Pokemon Snap, and it didn't seem to affect frame rate. I mean, why would it? I mean, you've had fully sized Wailords on games literally made almost 20 years ago that didn't have that problem. And yeah, the Pokemon DLC also apparently is a massive disaster. The walking Pokemon speeds are all over the place. Basically, the partner Pokemon walking mechanic, hilariously, is just a wild encounter that's been redesigned to not trigger a fight and to stay a certain distance away from the player. Probably so that way you get too close, it doesn't trigger a fight against your own Pokemon. Just possibly saying. And a lot of people cited, well, it's realistic that certain Pokemon move that slow when they don't move that slow in camp and other places like that. Pokemon is such a fucking mistake at this point. I fucking love it. I love it. I love every time something happens with it. It's just equally as fucking hilarious. And as much as I love Pokemon, I played it for 20 years. These games are just terrible. They're fucking jokes. And I mean, like, at least the idea behind the DLC looks cool. I think that there's at least some interesting stuff behind it. Besides the new forms for, like, Zapdos and the Regis, or not Zapdos, the legendary birds and the Regis. I've said forever, I think new forms are cool when they're used sparingly. I don't really like it when they're used, like, as almost what feels like a very big crutch to add new Pokemon while not really adding new Pokemon. It just kind of overcomplicates the whole idea behind it. And I would rather have new Pokemon as opposed to old Pokemon just redesigned with different stuff. And then you just have two species of Pokemon. You have the new Pokemon, the old Pokemon. And usually speaking, the new Pokemon have a lot of shit going for them. I just think it's way more interesting when you have a large variety of new Pokemon. Like, as much as flack as I give Gen 5 for just kind of padding the Pokedex at points, it feels, with like slightly redone Pokemon. I at least will say it did add the most Pokemon of any generation, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but every Pokemon was at least a new design. Might feel similar to like an old Pokemon or a combination of two old Pokemon, but at least having that old Pokemon or having all new Pokemon definitely varies it more than just having different variants. And that was one of the things I didn't really like about Alolan Pokemon. Like, yeah, they're cool, yeah, they look good, but as an idea, I think having forms is not a great idea. It's not that excellent. They're like, there's certain Pokemon like, oh, Deoxys has forms. All right, cool. Oh, Unknown has forms. All right, cool. I don't think anyone's mad about Unknown. But I think when you get to a certain point when like every generation it's just like, all right, well, half of these Pokemon are just returning Pokemon with new forms, or at least that's who's padding the Pokedex, is like old Pokemon with new forms. Like Meowth having 3 forms now is just kind of out there in my opinion. Dynamax, I'm not even going to talk about Dynamaxing, honestly. And Gigantamaxing, I'm not even getting into that. Cyberpunk 2077 got delayed till November. They say it's to get feedback from games journalists. I think it's just because of the ongoing viral outbreak. It's possible they could do both. I mean, I'm not going to say it's completely a lie. I just think that in general, a lot of people had to get delayed as this did not clear up by summer like a lot of people probably expected. In fact, arguably, it's gotten a lot worse. Yeah, I think a lot of stuff is getting delayed. I know Final Fantasy's patch got delayed. There's a lot of stuff that kind of got thrown to the wolves. Microsoft is going to shut down Mixer on July 22nd, so that's 5 days from today, which I think is next Tuesday or Wednesday. What? Oh, it finally opened up Photoshop. Holy shit. That is the 22nd of July is next Wednesday. So that's pretty much the end of Mixer. It's going to merge with Facebook Gaming. I'll probably no longer be streaming on Facebook Gaming because I don't really want to. I like streaming on Mixer. I like streaming on dedicated gaming platforms. And you could argue YouTube is not a dedicated gaming platform. But I mean, it is the home, basically, of my content. Odds are you're watching this, you're probably watching it on YouTube in the first place. Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning is becoming a thing. In 2021, there will be a DLC called Fatesworn. So, to recap, this is also by THQ Nordic, by the way. To recap, Kingdoms of Amalur came out in 2012. It was published by EA and made by 3-8 Studios. I forget the whole gist of it, but they like borrowed money from Rhode Island or something, and they didn't pay it back. And because of that, 3-8 went out of business, and EA just kind of, I guess, let the franchise just die and simmer off because they're too busy on Battlefield. I'm not sure. I forget all the details. But basically, the game was fun. I absolutely enjoyed it. And now it's getting a sequel, or not a sequel, a remaster, which is going to have a new DLC in it. And this game already had 2 DLCs, The Legend of Dead Kell and The Thief of Naros. So it actually comes out, I think, this September. So that's kind of interesting. I definitely will be playing it. Probably will go the same build as last time, just, fixing up a few things. I've played it since. I actually played it a few months ago just to kind of dick around in it and do some stuff. It's a very fun game. I actually really do enjoy it. It feels like a very realized world and has a lot of good stuff going for it. It tries to blend action with RPG, with choice-based stuff, and dialogue. You can tell that they put a lot of love and effort and care into the game. And that's why I really like it so much. It is one of my favorite games just because when I played it, I was kind of blown away by how much fun it is. And I really did like that. Now, the biggest news we've all been waiting for is that Harry Potter will be getting a AAA game. And this is not news. It's kind of been a rumor for a while. They haven't officially announced it, so I doubt it's a complete rumor, but I also just want to say take it with a grain of salt. It could get canceled. They haven't even publicly really talked about it or anything. And I think it's a great idea because I think Harry Potter, as much as I'm not a huge fan of the books and a huge fan of everything, I do think it has an interesting world. Some of the games in it were pretty good. I actually did rather enjoy Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets as a kid. It was a pretty fun little puzzle game. There were others, but after the first three, they kind of became linear. And then, I mean, EA kind of acquired it. I forget. No, EA always published it. It's just EA started to do their modern thing. Apparently, it will be developed by Avalanche Software. It will have an open world Hogwarts and surrounding areas. And Rowling will have very little direct involvement. Now, usually a lot of this kind of happens. People brought up that Lucas had a lot of very little involvement because Lucas kind of hated his expanded universe, which is ironic because the expanded universe is what really drew a lot of people to Star Wars. There were a lot of elements that weren't covered in the then 6 movies, and I think 1 or 2 other things he actually officially acknowledged, whereas other people around him at LucasArts and Lucasfilms basically kind of reference the importance of having an expanded universe. And I think that's where Disney Star Wars is definitely currently suffering, because they don't have potential for an expanded universe anymore. Most of the people who worked on the original trilogy are either now old, retired, or unfortunately passed away. I believe Chewbacca's actor passed away recently, and unfortunately we all know Carrie Fisher did as well. Most of the new cast also don't want to return. Oscar Isaac himself specifically said he will return if, I think, he wants another car or another mansion or something, which basically means that unless he gets super greedy and really wants to work for Disney again, he probably won't be returning. And I mean, these are people who all voiced their iconic characters and acted them, and they're not even going to return to have an extra role with them. They're not, and this is the era of the Disney, where Disney has the money to make stuff happen. As we've already cited, they remake all these different movies. Some of them they all make over the hundreds of millions, but not all of them are slam dunk box office busts like they want. They want billions of dollars on return. They want to break $1 billion basically on most of these movies, like what they did with Avengers and what they did with most of the Star Wars, besides not Last Jedi, the fucking other one, the one after it, Solo, and I think Rogue One might have broken $1 billion, maybe. They want big returns on investment. They don't want to hobble over the $1 billion mark. They want to outshoot it, depending on what the movie is. And unfortunately for them, they don't really have much of an expanded universe to build up, because I don't think people are really that invested in Star Wars, other than just liking it. They're not really interested in growing the universe, because I don't really think that the people who made the movies have much of a desire to grow the universe and leave stuff that can be followed up on later. The movies are very open and shut, regardless of whether you like them or not. There was a certain degree of open-endedness that existed in the prequels and especially the original trilogy that we just don't have anymore. And they do it at their own peril. I think an expanded universe for a lot of things is very important. Even in games, it's very important, because with games you kind of can eventually follow up on that, probably a lot faster because of how video games are. That's where you have open-endedness for DLC. And to cite something that I think really did a great job of that, there is Assassin's Creed kind of handled that fairly well. I kind of like that you had a movie that kind of established real world lore, as kind of mediocre as the movie was. I think you have a lot of DLC that takes a good long look at a lot of different things, and I think I like that about Assassin's Creed. When it's at its highs, it's really fucking high, and I enjoy that. But back to Hogwarts. I think it could be good. It's supposed to come out at the end of next year, which basically means it's probably going to get delayed, especially after all this shit happening. So maybe it'll be good. I think it'll be probably pretty decent. Not having Rowling be directly involved, regardless of what's going on with her and her Twitter wars, isn't necessarily a bad or good thing. A lot of times the creators of these iconic franchises are just better off not being involved. And sometimes that's at the peril of the work, sometimes that's to its benefit. Well, I guess we'll have to really see. I think a lot of people will probably be happy that she's not involved, though, so I won't really go too deeply into that. Other than that, it's not really too much that's been announced. I think for the most part, that's it. Assassin's Creed Valhalla exists. They showed off some gameplay at the Ubisoft Forward. nothing really came out from the Ubisoft forward. They announced a new battle royale, which I forget what it's even called. So I'm very good at this, I promise you. I did a stream reacting to it, but I honestly can't even remember for the life of me, because I really am not that interested in battle royales. That's more of a personal thing. The game could be great, I'm just not that interested. I don't really play any battle royales anymore. I think it was like Hyper something. Oh, fuck it. Let me look it up. Because if I don't look it up and I don't say it, it'll be bad. Hyperbole. Hyperscape. Hyperscape. Yeah, I totally remembered it, obviously. Yeah, it's presumably a battle royale. What I was really interested in was Far Cry 6. I was really interested in because I really enjoyed Far Cry 5. I thought it was a really fun, interesting game. It maybe had a little bit too many memes, and then, you know, sometimes it takes itself very seriously. But it's kind of an interesting game. Far Cry, I've never really played a game on it before, so I actually did enjoy it. Other than that, it was Valhalla, and they showed off Watch Dogs Legion, which I'm also not that interested in, which is ironic because there was a time when Watch Dogs 1 was like the game I was most excited for. But that's neither here nor there. Other than that, nothing really happened. Last of Us came out, whole big shit show over that, and the shitty story. Oh, I guess I should kind of talk about it since it's already out there. They were DMCAing people talking about it. They were copyrighting YouTubers who talked about it, even though they didn't sign NDAs. Which is just literally just hushing people. It is the definition of censorship, almost. They copyrighted stuff that was publicly available and even publicly revealed as far back as 2016. I think mostly because they just didn't care what they copyrighted. If they suspected it was anything negative towards the game, they copyrighted it. What was it? They had a couple of scenes with Joel where he wasn't in the game at all. So in advertisement, they showed a younger Joel. They had a bunch of other stuff where they had him. It's at least 1 or 2 scenes, maybe 3 scenes where they advertised that, hey, Joel is going to be in this game. And then Joel wasn't in the game. And that, I don't think you could get any more fake advertising than that. I think that's pretty much the definition of false advertisement. To say someone's in a game, knowing how important it is to the story, to the narrative, and then they're not. I mean, it's not something I think you could really Better Business Bureau, because you could always just say, oh, well, it was part of development that we got rid of it. But I do think to some degree they definitely want to try to pull a bait and switch with this game without really spoiling the game on a podcast. They definitely want to bait and switch a large chunk of this game. And I see a lot of people citing Metal Gear Solid 2 as, oh, well, that's a game where they did it and it worked out. Yeah, but Metal Gear Solid 2, the whole point of it is that, and by the way, the first step of that is that a lot of people still don't like that decision. I think a lot of people don't usually like when they get baited and switched with the protagonist of the game. I don't think that people really enjoy that. And in Metal Gear Solid 2, that to this day, I still see people cite Raiden as being too whiny, too complainy, even though within the meta narrative of the game, it makes a lot of sense, because the whole idea of Metal Gear Solid 2 is that, yeah, you're not playing as a hero. Heroes are what you make of them. You know, Raiden is some dude who's been through simulations, and no simulation could have prepared him for what he would go through on that day. And it sort of facilitates his transformation from willing lapdog into an independent man who's going to try to fight for what's right and what he believes in. There's a lot of elements to that story where that kind of makes more sense, putting you in the boots of someone who's not the legendary Solid Snake from the Shadow Moses incident. And even then, people still weren't really fans of it, especially since Solid Snake's actual portion of that game is so short that you don't really even get to do much with him. It's just kind of like Tanker. Tanker, I mean, it technically is one of the 2 segments of the game, but I think it goes without saying that Plant is where most of the gameplay is and most of the story. Tanker is almost kind of a glorified tutorial for the most part. Whereas here, the intent was done probably to suppress a very, very heavily shock value dependent moment of the game. And I mean, at what point, like, technically speaking, I think that Kojima did fake some pictures. He might have done the same thing. I'm just going to assume that he did exactly the same thing. I know that on advertisement, they completely hid the fact that Raiden was in the game. And I don't want to say it's one of those things that, oh, well, Kojima does it, so it's okay. Because, I mean, it really depends how much you like the story of Metal Gear Solid 2. And, I mean, a lot of people like Metal Gear as a whole. You'd have to, I think it's really on a person-by-person basis. But I think a lot of people, especially where Metal Gear went before finally crashing, I think it kind of ultimately was worth it. I don't know how we're going to get games after this for Last of Us that are going to be worth it. I'll just say that. I don't know how that's going to be pulled off. I don't think the people that dug us into this hole are going to be the ones that get us out of this hole. And I mean, you could say that about a lot of stuff. I mean, I say that about EA. I say that about a lot of other companies too. And I said that about Star Wars. And a lot of people back in 2017 specifically told me, oh, don't worry, you just gotta wait. Everything will make sense. You know, The Last Jedi may have done a lot of weird stuff, but that's okay because we need to take it in a new direction. And then what did we get for Episode 9? Just a shittier Return of the Jedi. Literally. That's what we got. And nobody really wants to defend Rise of Skywalker. I don't see people going onto Twitter wars and going onto boards to defend the Rise of Skywalker. I think it's kind of just generally accepted that they didn't have a plan. They admitted they had a plan. Now we know they never had a plan. And there's no real, like, no one wants to run to defend J.J. Abrams' conclusion to Rian Johnson's massively divisive movie. I don't think anyone wants to fucking do that. And I mean, that kind of somehow ended up just going back to Disney not caring. They know the movies will print billions, so why even put writing in? Which, I mean, I think it just doesn't match the quality of the work, and definitely not the backing behind the work. You have billion-dollar franchises with $20 writing, and that is a terrible loss, in my opinion. But I digress. The point is that I don't see how Last of Us 3, if there will be one, is going to pull them out of this hole, this narrative hole they've written themselves into. I don't think Neil Druckmann is going to be able to do that. I just personally don't. Whether or not you like the story and the stuff about it, I try to dodge more of that. I mean, everyone has their opinion. I mean, you know, that's just how assholes are. Everyone has them. But the stuff that they did around the game is not justifiable. And frankly, it's disgusting to censor people who are just talking about a game because information got leaked. That you cannot do that. That's actually not legal. You cannot censor somebody for talking about something that is literally a First Amendment right. That it does not matter if the information is private. It does not matter that the information, once it's leaked to the public, it's public knowledge. Like, that's literally the definition of public knowledge. If you and I have a private conversation, and unbeknownst to us, someone else has recorded it and uploads it to the internet, yeah, that's a breach of privacy on that person. But for the rest of everyone else who listens to it, that's public knowledge now. That's not private. And needless to say, it was just done to gag people, which ironically, the Streisand effect still exists and will never not exist. It was kind of a very dark couple of weeks, I'd say. But I mean, that's the general gist. Now, if people are showing unreleased screenshots and talking about it, okay, then you could say, well, it's something else. But if people are just showing, like what I'm doing, a fucking city background, just scrolling on the screen, one of these days I gotta reverse it, have it go from right to left as opposed to left to right. I'll never remember to do that. Then that's completely different. I mean, public knowledge is public knowledge, and I mean, it's just issuing DMCAs that they know people are not going to contest and that they have no intention of enforcing. Other than that, I mean, the game got rave 10s out of 10s. I don't trust any media reviewers, honestly, at this point. It's the same thing with the people who reviewed Battle for Bikini Bottom, specifically IGN and GameSpot, giving them a 2 and a 5. I don't trust game reviewers at all. I think that game reviewers are some of the laziest, least qualified people in the world for the job that they do. I understand that a review is a review, but when you ignore objective qualities about it, when you ignore things about what the game is trying to do, when you ignore the market around the game, and when you ignore the price point that the game is at as well, I think there's a lot that goes into a review more than me didn't like this, me think game bad. Especially when you start citing stuff that is outside of the scope of the game. But that's another topic for another time. I think video game reviewers are some of the actual worst people to review games, which is ironic because it's literally what they are there for, is to review games and to provide an objective sort of standpoint on it. But, I mean, at this point, the vast majority of non-normies don't really care about what video game reviewers have to say. And it's truly a tragedy, but I mean, that's just how life is. I mean, the least qualified people ever sometimes sit on the throne, because that's probably the most realistic thing ever, is that people who totally should not be there are there. The only good thing that came out of the Last of Us thing was we got that video of Troy Baker, like, basically simping for it. I thought that was pretty funny, likening and leaking and talking about leaks to dopamine rushes and stuff like that, like basically saying people are chain smokers who like them if they don't like the game, and that Naughty Dog, my favorite quote was, Naughty Dog has 30 years of good games, established pedigree. There's a lot of game companies that have been around since before Naughty Dog that have tarnished their reputation. I think in this podcast alone, I've named multiple publishers that have established pedigree that threw it all away in the span of maybe 5 years. EA has thrown away so much shit, ruined so many games. Konami definitely was another one of them. I say Square Enix has done a lot of missteps, and I think a lot of people are aware of that. Ubisoft has fucked up a lot of their games. Even Nintendo has done a lot of stuff that people weren't fans of. But I mean, Nintendo gets a lot of a pass because Nintendo kind of just, people just let that squeeze by. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but a lot of times people are great until they do something bad. Like, they'll be great for a long period. That's how they stick around for a long period of time. And that's why ultimately Naughty Dog will recover. I mean, they're not going to go under from this unless Sony specifically pulls the plug on them. They're not going to go under from this. And I don't think they will. I just have no interest in anything that they make after this. Especially when Crash 4 is coming out, and Crash is now an Activision thing. Activision, that's another good one. Activision was another company, that did a lot of shit. Wasn't there one more? There was like one more I named. I can't remember. I'm not going to remember before I end this podcast. But yeah, I thought it was kind of sad. I don't know why Troy Baker did that. I mean, they got their sales, right? Even though the sales dropped after week 1 or 2, I mean, they got what they wanted. And that's really what companies do. They just want to make people feel happy about spending their money. They don't want to make something artistically cool or interesting. That takes a backseat. That's not the era we live in. We live in the era where companies just want to make you feel at peace with giving them your money, regardless of the quality of the work that they put in. And I think that's sad, but I mean, it's kind of what the ultimate thing that happened with movies was, and it's going to happen with video games too. Especially, and the biggest one, I guess this is the final thing I'll talk about, is especially if video game prices are going to go up. Now, this all started when the former Sony president, I think it was the former Sony president, I'm not going to look, came out and said that selling games at 60 is just not a sustainable model. For games to be profitable, they need to be sold at 80. And that had a lot of people saying, oh shit, what's going to happen? And now, the NBA 2K21 game has had its price advertised. If you buy it on the current gen, which is PS4 and Xbox One, you will be able to get it for $60 for the base edition. However, if you want to buy next gen, it's going to be $70. And that's what has a lot of people really, really spooked, is that if NBA, one of the bigger games, it sells out every year, everybody buys it. That's kind of one of the memes. It's like every year for consoles, it's 2K and COD. And if they want people to buy that and it goes up to 70, I mean, it's the open door policy, right? Once one person opens the door and walks through, why the hell wouldn't you? Why the hell wouldn't everyone else do it? And we saw that happen with paid online. Originally, it was only Microsoft that paid for or made you pay for online. Then it was Sony that made you pay, and then it was the Switch and Nintendo. So I mean, after a certain point, you just kind of realize it's like, well, what's going to stop them? Well, what's going to stop the next 5-10 developers from saying, you know, we want that extra $10 per copy, right? Because why wouldn't they? And you already know what's going to happen. People are not just going to not play video games because the price went up slightly. The price, in my opinion, for games to become cost prohibitive for people to buy would be something astronomical, like $90. $90, maybe 80, and I think that they're also kind of trying to suss that out with a major game like 2K. They want that. Now, I understand that not every game in history has always cost $60. That's just kind of a generally unspoken standard we reached probably sometime around 2000, 2005. And definitely by the 360 era, we were definitely there. Because people have brought up that games have cost a lot more before in the past. That's great, but I think you could cite that to two things. One, the standards have shifted. I think the standards for what a $60 game is, and a lot of games don't reach that today, have shifted gradually over time. So for instance, back in the days, one of the examples I saw get cited was Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, my bad. And in that game specifically, it cost like $77 on the SNES. And I forget when that game came out. It must have been like 91. The game's older than I am. I see that get cited constantly, or not constantly. I saw that cited once or twice. That's cool, but when you think about for 1991, the type of game that we had, it had pretty good 3D graphics. It was the sequel to a very successful, highly solid gameplay game. It improved it, or at least was on the same level. I've seen people argue about this. I know it's a very, very nitpicky thing, and people generally enjoyed it. People thought it was worth the money, and this is 1991, mind you. Nowadays, when you have a game and you have all these big blockbuster budgets and you have all these people, these high-grade voice actors and all these 3D graphics and everything, the quality of what you expect from $60 has changed. And knowing this, Battle for Bikini Bottom specifically sells at $30 because I feel that they are aware that a game that was made almost 20 years ago could not be a $60 release in today's market. It's just not possible. It would be disingenuous to sell that at such a high price. Now, THQ Nordic aren't exactly super geniuses for this. I just think they recognize that nobody would really want to pay $60 for a game that's that old, that everyone knows everything about, and honestly isn't super long. And that's fine. I mean, I think that's they struck the right borderline price. I think $25, maybe $30 is a perfect price. I bought it on sale on Steam, but I also bought it on Switch as well. I don't think I bought it on PS4 yet. I'll eventually do that. But that's my prerogative. I like supporting them. I like supporting companies that remaster the things I love, because that, to me, is the most important thing. That's like the most important thing to me. Is I like that they remastered Spyro, and I really want to support that because I want them to keep. I want Activision to know that I want them to keep making Spyro, which is what they're doing with Crash. They have Crash 4, where they retconned the other games. But I think that's crazy cool. I Toys for Bob, man, I swear they are one of my favorite developers along with THQ Nordic. It's the nostalgia. I think that's a great idea. But to their credit, they have recognized the price. At least with the remasters, they recognize that they're $40 games. I don't think they were $60 when I paid for them. Even if they were, I think that's pretty decent. But I know Battle for Bikini Bottom was $30, and when you look at a $60 game today, right? Like every time you have a big budget game that pushes the envelope and completely blows everything out the water, you get to that point where it's like, well, how do we justify a price tag, right? So like, let me give you an example. When I was in middle school, Halo 3 came out. It's funny, it just got released on the Master Chief Collection. Halo 3 and COD 4 set the bar for what you could do with $60. I think that those two games for the multiplayer and the good campaigns that you had. Halo 3 blew everyone out the water. The Forge mode, Theater mode, which to this day is not a staple. I don't know why COD got rid of it. That really set a bar, I feel, for how good quality games could be. For $60, you got tons of content. Now, I wasn't a fan of the fact that ODST was a $60 DLC. Let's be real, it's just a DLC. And they added in, what's it called? The multiplayer experience if you didn't buy all the expansions and stuff, which for me worked because I didn't, but I could see how, like, if you had already bought all the Halo 3 DLC, that would be kind of weird and annoying. But like I said, Halo 3 really set that. Then you had Modern Warfare 2. I think everybody played Modern Warfare 2, so I don't really need to explain that. You know, the campaign, they upped it a notch. It felt like you were watching a movie, and that's what COD campaigns eventually would become, is just kind of movies. Then stuff like Skyrim. I'm just gonna leaf through this because I'm taking too long. Skyrim, in my opinion, Deus Ex was $60 when it came out. It was a lot of fun. I thought that was definitely up there for narrative quality. Yep, and writing and good story and a good environment. Mass Effect was also one of them. So Mass Effect 2 to keep with this timeline. I think I said Skyrim. I know I'm missing StarCraft 2 when it came out. Was a very good one. Witcher, Phantom Pain. There's a lot of games that gradually, as time has gone on, get bigger and bigger and bigger. For me personally, the Assassin's Creed games gave me so much content. Assassin's Creed Origins, I knew day one I wanted to buy that game's DLC, and I'm actually sad there was not more. And when I played it years ago, I got days worth of content out of that game. I think I uploaded every single bit of that playthrough. I think the base game itself took me something like a day. It was like a full 24 hours. Assassin's Creed Odyssey blew that out of the water. And, you know, say what you will about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, for $60, the amount of gameplay I got out of that as a single player was astronomically huge. So there's a lot that goes into the pricing of a game, right? So, like, okay, what's a big game coming out? Cyberpunk. No way in hell would I ever see anyone defend Cyberpunk as being less than 60. I think we could all agree it's gonna have a massive single player campaign. I don't know if it'll have multiplayer, that's fine, but something like that's gonna have a massive campaign. It could be a bad game, let me put that out there. Maybe Cyberpunk, Witcher was a flash in the pan, maybe it'll be a bad game, but hypothetically, let's say it becomes the good game everyone knows. It's like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, right? Cool. That game probably will have enough content, if it's in the same vein as all the other games they put out, will be a $60 game. But little side games that have all these weird things about them, you know, like some games, like already there's games that are not worth 60. I think that's kind of the general problem with gaming. And to say that these companies and these games that aren't worth the money are going to get bumped up to a $60 price tag is already kind of scary. Our $70 price tag is scary. Like Resident Evil 3 this year was not really worth was not worth 60 in my opinion. Resident Evil 3 was almost in every way a step back from not only the original Resident Evil 3 but literally the game released last year. I talked about Last of Us earlier. I don't think Last of Us is a $70 or a $60 game. I think that having only a campaign, and then even then one with a story like that, is not $60. It's not. It's like maybe 40, but I mean, people pay the 60 because everything is 60, right? There's no dynamically priced thing, because the quality of a game is usually subjective. And because of that, for instance, someone listening might say, fuck yeah, Sword and Shield was totally worth $60, and Last of Us was totally worth 60, but all these other games, fuck those other games you like. And for me, at least personally, like, I also forgot to mention Fire Emblem. I'm looking right at it right now. That, in my opinion, was worth the 60, and I actually paid more than 60 for it. I actually bought the collectors. I don't remember how much that was. I don't even remember buying the collectors for half these games. But yeah, long story short is that games, I think what they're doing right now is they're testing the waters. They're testing the waters, or it's already a foregone conclusion, in which case, well, shit, aren't we fucked? But I think right now, if they're not already sure about it, they are testing the waters. Both Microsoft and Sony are relying on 2K to test the waters and see how much people really want to play or pay for this game. And see if they can get away with it, basically. And I'm going to tell you right now, all this is going to do is make me more reserved about getting games. Let's be fair. I have enough games now that if games were banned, but you could still play them, they made no more games. I have enough games that I could just probably put out another 10,000 videos. Maybe, okay, well, it was 10,000. I reached 10,000 largely because of the 15-minute time limit. I could put out definitely another couple thousand videos worth of gameplay of any game. If I were to play every game in my library, it would be easy. It would just take me a long time. And that's kind of why I don't want to spend too much time on this podcast, but that's the thing I'm talking about. Like, I mean, I could not see myself going for risks. Like, I used to buy games like Sleeping Dogs I bought as a risk. I'm buying Ghost of Tsushima as a risk. And I say risk, I mean, ultimately we kind of knew they were good games, but I didn't know when I bought Sleeping Dogs, I didn't know anything about it, actually, to be honest with you. I just heard it was a GTA style game with hand to hand, and it played like Batman, and that was it. I bought it off of that alone, and it turns out it was a great fucking game. It was well worth the money, and that was back in 2012 too. So I mean, like I said, times change. What you expect out of your money goes up. Like back in, because honestly, I could even tell you this, back when my grandparents were kids, and I've watched movies that they watched when they were kids, you know, when they considered that to be like the best stuff ever. That was their 4K. And we're talking about movies that had no color, that to show difference in location, they would tone the film differently. So like they'd have blue for one area, like black, or I'm sorry, like a gray overtone for another. Specifically, I think it was Phantom of the Opera. And, you know, like stuff like that hypothetically, let's attach an arbitrary price tag to it. That would have been their 60, right? Our 60, and thank God movie theater tickets are not 60. I mean, they want you to spend that kind of money, but they're not for the ticket alone. Our 60 is stuff like Avengers Endgame, right? Like stuff like with massive appeal, massive marketing. Everybody knows who Thanos is now. Everybody knows who the Avengers is, right? Stuff like that. It's a massive level up in just how the content is delivered, how it looks, the quality of acting in it, the quality of effects, the amount of effort put into it is astronomical. To put that in video game perspective, you wouldn't buy a game like Crash Bandicoot 1 today for 60, but in 1995 you would have, because that was kind of just the best that was out there. The best always pushes up the best, and the further and further you go along with it, the harder it is for the stuff that's lower than that would have been good years ago to get away with it. And I mean, that's just because that's how you break ground. Like if Sword and Shield had come out in 2000, right, it would have been the best game. It would have been the only game people ever talked about. I mean, we did kind of have that with XD and Coliseum, but you get what I mean. If there was a console Pokemon game that was like a mainline game and looked that good for 2000, would have been the best game of the year. Would have instantly sold everything. But you need a time machine to make that work, because back then that's not what they were about. They could have done it, they just opted not to. But I digress. We'll see what happens with it. I will be doing shorter, more frequent podcasts to kind of keep people abreast of things. And hopefully you stuck through this. Hopefully some good stuff happens for fucking once. I think that would be nice. And I will see you guys next time on the podcast, so take care.